Welcome to Wings of a Phoenix podcast. I'm your host, Trena, and I help high achieving, high functioning women over 40 redesign their next chapter post divorce. And as a post divorce coach, my mission is to move you from functioning to intentionally designing a life that you actually love. And I am so excited to be with you here today, especially as we celebrate Her Story Month this March. Today's promise is that we are going to bridge the gap between sitting in the pain of your past and designing the power of your future. My guest today is Deborah Carol, and I actually met Deborah when we were both in the trenches out in Arizona, launching our coaching businesses as part of the Tony Robbins Mastermind. We were on the same team. We spent a lot of time together, and we really got to know each other well. And we have very aligned missions for each of our coaching businesses. So I'm so excited to have her here. And when I look at her Rising Butterflies mission and the work that I do with Wings of a Phoenix, I knew immediately that we were going to be friends. We were going to be aligned. We are so invested in making sure that we empower and support women. So I'm so excited to have her here. As I said, so whether you are navigating a season of grief or you're walking through that fire after a divorce or another life transition, we're here to show you how to move through that and get to the other side. So, Deb, I'm so honored to have you here. And before we dive into some of the deep stuff, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself to the audience.
Yes. Well, Trena, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast. This is so exciting. And yeah, and I was thinking about it on Saturday that, it's been a month since we met and that we were out in Launch Lab, and how much I miss you and miss everybody. I mean, we had a great team, and the mastermind, the launch team, the launch lab team, they're just phenomenal people. And I feel like I'm ready to rock and roll. And I'm glad that, you and I are together on our journey. So thank you for inviting me and allowing me to share my mission.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for joining. So, Deb, I know that you spent 30 years in health and safety, protecting others,
Yes.
and followed by years as a full-time caregiver. So, when that season ended for you, I think you went through a period where you felt like a void in your purpose. So, for the high functioning women who are listening, who have spent their life being a caregiver for her career or her family, and now after her divorce, she's feeling that void, how can she start to kind of find momentum to really start something new again?
Yeah, well, first, let me say that I think when you spent years in a certain role and that suddenly changes, that that's tough.
Mhm.
That's a hard place to be in. And taking my own story, having not only lost my father and my sense of purpose, as you brought up, I had also given up, that 30 years of
Mhm.
being in health and safety. So my life had changed dramatically. And when I did lose dad and realized that I had no sense of purpose anymore, I really didn't. And that that was scary, but it was dark. And I honestly can say that at that time I didn't know what to do. And so what I realized is I was stuck in my, what I now call, the sacred chrysalis of grief.
Mm.
And one, I realized that a butterfly doesn't emerge until it's ready. It doesn't emerge until it's fully developed. And I said, maybe I need to honor this phase in the process in order to be able to emerge stronger and fill that void with new purpose and create a new identity. So I think one of the things I would tell a high functioning woman, that it's okay to honor the grieving process,
Yeah.
to allow yourself the time to heal. And because in reality, in the chrysalis phase in the butterfly life cycle, that's where all the magic is really happening. That's where the wings are being formed and their antenna and their internal GPS that tells them where to go. And nature doesn't rush. So I think we want to escape so badly and find the light again, that sometimes we don't give ourselves the chance to heal. So I feel that, giving ourselves the grief to go through the process is critical to us becoming who we're meant to be in the future.
Absolutely. And just to build on that, I think when women go through a divorce too, they do have a grieving process very similar to the one that you speak of when you go through a loss of a loved one. And it's really a process that you need to go through and you have to go through. And there's
Yes.
not really any going around it. And it is not linear. It's very much, I would say, a loop or circular. What you said, like you said, just giving yourself some time and honoring that space that you're in while you're grieving is normal, it's natural, it's okay. And it's
Yes.
really part of how things work in nature.
Yes. And I'll just tell this little educational tidbit because I think it
Sure.
relates. But when the caterpillar finally pupates and creates its chrysalis, after they create the chrysalis and the outer shell starts to harden to protect them, they actually liquefy. And I was thinking about that one time. I said, wow, that has to be a grueling process and maybe even scary. Who knows what the little caterpillar is thinking when this is happening. And it's traumatic. And so is loss, whether it's due to a divorce or we've lost our spouse or, a lifelong career, our home. That's traumatic. And we need to love ourselves enough to heal from that trauma of caused by that life change, in order to be able to step forward and in order to be able to step out of our sacred chrysalis
Right.
and become the best version of ourselves, that's stronger, more beautiful, and with even more capabilities than we had before, because now we've got the experience of the grief and loss to add to a lifetime of experiences and wisdom.
Now, Deb, obviously you and I know each other, and I understand about the rising butterflies and the mission and all. But for our listeners, could you just maybe walk us back a little bit
Sure.
and help us understand how did the butterfly come to be, how you've aligned your coaching business? Maybe let's start there. I just want to make sure we frame it for them so that they understand everything we're
Sure.
talking about.
Sure. So Dad and I had a fun summer hobby, and we raised and released butterflies. And after he passed away, I forced myself to do a little bit of it myself. And I was sitting outside and watched a monarch butterfly emerge from its chrysalis. And I just started pondering. I said, how magical, and what a miracle from our creator, that something that was multi-legged, creepy, crawly little caterpillar that was able to nosh on the leaves of a plant, transformed into this beautiful winged being that could still walk, but it can now fly. It's more beautiful in form than the little caterpillar, and it fully knows its purpose. And I said, this is just, you know, a true miracle of creation. And and then I had the realization that this is the last phase of the life cycle of the butterfly.
Mhm.
And I said to myself, I want to be like a butterfly. I want to be better. I want to be stronger. I want to use my years of experience for the greater good. And that was the first thing that gave me some inspiration of what I was supposed to do with my life moving forward. And then, like you and I have talked about, we've also attended Thrive in 2025, which was
Mhm.
in May of 2025, of course.
Yep.
And during that time, because I still, even witnessing that butterfly emerge and saying, I want to be a butterfly, I still didn't know what that meant, what it looked like. But when we were in Thrive in 2025, one of the exercises that Tony Robbins had us do was write a letter to our future self, in which I didn't know what that looked like either, because I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I just remember writing, remember when you felt like this, remember when, life felt so dark, and remember when you felt so scared and alone, and the fear was almost paralyzing. And, as that flowed from pen to paper, it was like the emotions just flowed onto the paper. It was like an emotional dump that was very overwhelming. And I just started sobbing. I said, this has been awful. Like, I don't wish this on anybody. And I kept repeating in my mind, no woman should have to go through this alone. And that, combined with the experience and my thoughts watching the butterfly emerge and take to the skies that day, really gave me the inspiration of what I was supposed to do. And that is helping women like me, women who are experiencing a significant life change of some sort and wanting to or being forced to start over later in life.
Mhm.
And that my mission is now to be there for those women who can, so they don't feel so scared and alone. And they feel like they've got a community of like-minded sisters who are either going through the same thing or have gone through the same thing, and have the support. They don't need to feel isolated and alone anymore, but then also provide them with the tools, the other tools and resources that I found helped me finally break free of the chrysalis of grief and use that experience for the greater good, which is helping women over 50 start over later in life.
I love that. And I've got two follow-ups for that. One around this whole idea of starting over. And then the other one, just to keep on with your butterfly. I know that you released, excuse me, you realized a lifelong dream of becoming an author. And I see the book in the background there. And that is about Madeline, the monarch butterfly. And that was done
Yes.
to honor your father. So one of the things, and we're both authors, if you could speak to just when you're in a season of grief, if a woman's in a season of grief, how does the act of finally taking it from inside her emotions and actually putting it on paper, writing it down, and actually naming her story, how does that help her, reclaim her power and maybe get through some of the grief and heal even?
Yeah. Well, I know for me, writing, journaling, writing articles, whatever is a form of release. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a form of creative expression as well. So when I looked back when I was on my journey of trying to find my new identity and realized, hey, Deb, you wrote, you know, you wrote a book and you did that at age 63. So you already took a giant step towards a new purpose
Mm-hmm.
in publishing this children's book. And so you've proven to yourself that it can be done. But while I was really trying to navigate this new and unknown path, I did a lot of writing and a lot of journaling. And that letter to my future self was culmination of, I think, all the writing that I had done. And part of the other, that what I should say is another big part of that process was writing my gratitudes every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped me shift my focus from what is lacking in my life to what my blessings are and how many blessings I had. So when I would pick up my journal and flip back over the pages and say, wow, look at all God has blessed me with. Just being able to go back and seeing that in writing gave it a boost, gave that shift in perspective, the boost I needed. So I think writing is something necessary for our growth, just from the perspective it's there, and unless you burn it or throw it out, it's
Yep.
there for your reference, that you can see how far you've come.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
love
that's a
that.
big.
And that definitely, that's something that I work with my clients on too. And I definitely did for myself is journal, and I still do. And it's always interesting. I think, you go back, you write something, let's say you write something, today, and then you go look at it 6 months from now, and you're like, oh my goodness, look how far I have come in just those 6 months, or things
Exactly.
that were I was hoping for or wanting I've actually accomplished now. Or like you said, and being grateful for what you have and taking that perspective as opposed to operating from a place of lack in the things that you don't have. So I think that is all just wonderful.
Yes, and I want to just add that after I was done writing that
Hmm.
letter to my future self, and I found it fascinating that my handwriting changed the more I wrote. It
Wow.
changed, and it was almost like my emotions were being released onto that page. And after that exercise, and after, I sobbed for, maybe 20 minutes, because it was just so overwhelming, I felt lighter. I
Yeah.
felt that sense of release. So it was probably one of the best tools that I was shown when Tony asked us to do that at Thrive in 2025. And it's something that I'm carrying through in my coaching.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And then just that release that you're talking about, that's
Yes.
why, in my working with my clients, and I talk to them about, and I work with them on mind, body, and spirit alignment, because your body, what you felt was your body releasing stress
Yes.
and emotion that had
Yes.
been in there that maybe you were subconsciously not even aware of. But once it lifts, you feel lighter. And it's because your body was holding on to that stress, and now it let it go. So
Yes.
that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. And it was really the first day that I felt hope for the future.
Mhm.
And I intentionally went back to my journals, and I looked back, and it really gave me a shift in perspective, that even though I couldn't really see it, I had been growing the entire time.
Oh, yes,
I
yes.
had been
I think that's
transforming.
another thing that people don't realize, or we aren't always focused on. And I can't remember exactly who I was listening to, but I was listening to either Eric Thomas, or it could have been Tony Robbins. I can't remember now. But they were talking about how when you plant a seed in the ground, you can't see all the things that are happening
Yes. Yes.
underneath the surface. But once it comes up and emerges from the ground, then you have a beautiful flower or a beautiful plant, but you can't see all the work that's happening underneath. And that's the same thing. You
Yes.
we don't always recognize our own growth because we're so focused on it. And there's so many things that are happening. I think with your clients, with my clients, from when they start working with us to once we get them through the programs and they can actually see the new confidence that they have and the clarity that they have and the peace that they have. But in the beginning, sometimes it's hard to see that because it's a little messy down there in the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's the same thing with the chrysalis. When we're, if you ever have the opportunity to witness the life cycle of the butterfly, it just looks like it's hanging there wherever they attach themselves to and form their chrysalis. From the outside, it looks like nothing's happening. And then bam, one day out emerges this thing that looks nothing like a caterpillar.
Right.
And that's where the magic really does happen. And until we're able to get in a space or work with somebody that can help us shift our focus, we can't see it. Like you said, we're too close to the situation and we can't even necessarily feel it. Like I didn't feel any different until I wrote that letter to my future self.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of women over 40, and I know you work with women over 50, 60. They sometimes have a fear of starting over. So can you speak a little bit about just the truth really about starting a new mission or starting your next chapter in your 40s or 50s or 60s or even beyond? Can you speak a little bit on that topic?
Yes. Well, I can speak from experience that the fear you talk about is immense. I honestly can say the fear and anxiety was paralyzing for me to the point I would get up and I'd feed the cats and want to go right back into bed and just hide from the world. Again, hide in my stay stuck in my chrysalis. And so it is a very scary and isolating new path in life. And, the truth is we tell ourselves a lot of lies that because I kept saying in my mind, what am I going to do? Like, I'm too old. Who's going to hire me at this age? Physically, I don't feel capable of going back into health and safety because it's a very physically and emotionally taxing job. Who's going to hire me when they can hire somebody fresh out of, college for a lot less money than I would command? And, this is the time we should be winding down in life. Well, there are so many women in history who have made an indelible mark in history in their later years, in their 50s, 60s. Grandma Moses, she shifted gears and started painting at age 78.
Wow.
Painting, pictures with meaning. And I said, wait, one of the things that I used to say to myself when I was caring for Dad was that, I wanted to protect him. I wanted to keep him safe. So I would tell him what to do and what not to do. And then we'd bicker and, there would be some turmoil. And I'd walk away and I'd get mad at myself because I'd say, this man has a lifetime of independence behind him. And who am I to be telling him what to do? And I remembered those times and I said, he had that lifetime of independence and in wisdom built up. And I have the same thing. I have, at the time I had turned 64. I was 63 when he died. And when I had the awakening, I was 64. And I realized I had that same lifetime of experiences and wisdom behind me that can only fuel me doing even better and becoming better than I was before. So what I say to other women who are starting over, no matter what their age, whether they're in their 40s, 50s, 70s, even 80s, you can start over. It's never too late. And let's not waste the years of experiences and the wisdom and the power that we've accumulated and keep it to ourselves. Let's share it with the world and help make an indelible mark on the world, just like the Clara Bartons and the Grandma Moseses of the world.
Excellent. And Deb, I cannot believe how quickly this time has flown.
I know,
It
right?
has really gone by. So before we wrap up, I just want to ask if you have any closing thoughts for the audience.
Yes. One of the key things I think we both touched on it earlier is the feeling of being scared and alone.
Mhm.
So what I really would like to see people do is, of course, reach out to your inner circle, your friends and family. But that can be a double-edged sword because we don't want to feel like a burden to them. So
Absolutely.
find a community, find a local live community, like a church community or something related to maybe something you love, like gardening or something, and be around other people. But I think the key thing is to get yourself in a community where there are like-minded women who are going through or have gone through the same exact thing you are. Circumstances are different, of course,
Right.
but the reality is the same. We feel scared. We feel alone and maybe very isolated. So find yourself the right community. And my thing is, it might take a couple tries to find the right community, but the right one is going to lift you up. They're going to welcome you. They're going to lift you up, and they're going to be your go-to girls. And again, honor the process. This is a process. I mean, a butterfly doesn't rush the process when it's in its chrysalis. Monarch
Right.
butterfly, it's usually 2 weeks to the day from when they form the chrysalis to when they emerge
Hmm.
as a butterfly. Some other species take a little, can take a little longer, like the swallowtails. I've had them emerge years after they form their chrysalis. They
Oh,
don't
wow.
rush the process. And we need to take our cues from Mother
From
Nature
nature. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
not rush the process. So allow yourself the grace to
Hmm.
grieve, because you don't even realize it, but as you're grieving, you're growing and you're already
Absolutely.
transforming.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your
Oh,
story with us. And we started this podcast off with a promise that we would bridge the gap between sitting in the pain of the past and designing the power of the future. And so I think Deb has shown us that even in our season of grief, there is a path for us to move on to a new purpose. So I do thank you for that.
absolutely.
And for all the listeners out there, if you felt a connection to Deb's story or her mission, all of her information will be in our show notes. So please take a look at that. And if you're listening today and you're ready to stop just surviving and intentionally design your next chapter, I am here, of course, to help you figure out that alignment. And I'd love for you to book a clarity call with me, so we can sit down and start really designing your next chapter. And of course, if you enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to comment, like, share, and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Wings of a Phoenix. And remember that this is your season to rise.